Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jason and Ty, Jay and Ty with Fantasy and Facts. I'm your guru, Jay. We got Ty on the line. How's it going, Ty?
Everything's going good. Everything's going good. Ready to talk some football.
Nice, nice. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, it'll be better in 3 more weeks.
Yeah, that's when it's draft time, baby. We ready. We ready to go. We locking in right now.
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm ready to get this draft over with to see how well I put my skills to.
Yeah, we definitely make a difference in our league. I mean, this is for those of you just joining us. This is our second episode of this podcast. Um, Last week we kind of got started on the first round rookies and who we think you might want to add on your team, giving you the pros and cons of each one. This week we got a little something different for you guys, kind of doing a little bit of a mock draft. Um, letting you guys know who you should target in certain positions, no matter what position you're picking in the draft. So definitely stay tuned for that. But before we get started with that, let's go ahead and talk about some of the breaking news going on in the league right now. Got a couple stories that we can discuss here. One of the biggest ones, obviously, everyone's talking about it, Ezekiel Elliott and his potential suspension looming from the NFL. What do you think about that, Ty? How soon do you think we can expect a decision from the NFL?
I think the influence of Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboy owner, his influence will play a big part in this. I think he has enough friends around the league where he can hold it off for a little while longer, and also the appeal process is going to play a big role in this. We
Right,
seen what year was it? 2 years ago when everybody thought Brady was going to be suspended for 4 games after the Deflate Gate,
right.
and it got appealed for the whole season until just last year. So I think if it's up to Ezekiel Elliott, he will appeal it and play the whole season just because of the appeal process. And then maybe next year we might see something if the appeal gets denied.
Okay, so you're thinking he's gonna actually play the entire season, like he won't actually get any discipline this season.
Yes, unless Jerry Jones says, hey, the league is only going to suspend you 1 or 2 games. But if it's 4, 5, 6 games, I think he has to appeal it just for the fact the Cowboys don't want to go back to that 3-13 or 4-12 season, which they might do without Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
But I think the appeal process will play a big role. Since he did not face any criminal charges and it's taken too long to provide enough evidence against him, I
Right.
think he can appeal it, maybe win the appeal, but if he doesn't, he can play this season or even get late in the season and see if the Cowboys are even playoff worthy. And if they're not playoff worthy, just say, hey, I'll take this 4 or 5 game 6, 7 game suspension in week 12, and it won't even bother the Cowboys.
Nice, nice. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think one of the biggest things though is that like this the length of the suspension, right? Because we don't know if it's gonna be one, two, three, or even 4 games. I doubt that it reaches that 4 game mark because you only see people that um get suspended for 4 games if they're violating the league substance abuse policy, or if they got some real serious charge. Like he's technically he hasn't really done anything wrong. He's just popping up in the news a lot. Yet I would say he hasn't done anything wrong yet because we there's still a lot of pending investigations going on out there. But um, I think the length of the suspension is the biggest thing that we need to focus on because if it's 1 or 2 games, I could live with that. And I think his average draft position might drop just a little bit outside of that top three. Right now, he's pretty much going behind David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, or and Le'Veon Bell. Um, but I think if it's 1 or 2 games, he'll still be a first rounder. Uh, Probably just at the back of the first round, maybe ninth or 10th pick. But if you're smart, depending on if you think that the Cowboys offensive line can still hold up like they did last season, I mean, you have that third pick. definitely that'll be something you might want to reach for.
When you say 1 or 2 games, are you're going definitely David Johnson, you're going Le'Veon Bell, are you drafting Julio or Odell or Antonio Brown ahead of him?
I might have to do Odell over him. The thing is with the wide receivers, I feel like you want to get a running back as like one of these top tier running backs as soon as possible because obviously we all know the league is turning into a 1-2 punch league or even a three back rotation system. So if you have one of those guys that's in 90% of the time, you definitely want to get them. Um, but for your wide receivers, you have your up and down games. With New York, they have a bunch of new additions with the rookie tight end and also Brandon Marshall. I know they lost Victor Cruz, so I'm kind of sketchy about that a little bit with wide receivers because, like I said, if I'm spending that high of a pick, I just want something that I know is gonna give me some high production on a week to week basis, which wide receivers can give you, but it's not as consistent as a running back.
I think you also left out the fact that if you do end up drafting Ezekiel Elliott and he is suspended for 1 or 2 weeks, you don't know what he's going to do in those 1 or 2 weeks that might lengthen the suspension. I mean, we've seen the same thing with Josh Gordon and other former players that have been suspended during the suspension, failed drug tests,
Right.
or get in another domestic violence dispute. So we've seen he's had a couple of runnings with trouble, and we don't want that to happen after you draft him at number 3.
Right. And I think Jerry Jones is probably going to keep him in solitary confinement for those 2 weeks. He's going to make sure his baby doesn't get in any trouble
Yeah,
during those 2 weeks.
I think you're right. We can't forget Dez had a couple of issues his first couple of years, and he was not allowed to go nowhere without security that Jerry Jones assigned for him. And now
Right.
he's doing fine so far. No trouble we hear of.
And then even Orlando McClain, he was a pretty troubled player. And Dallas took him on, even though he's no longer with them right now. But it shows that Dallas kind of knows what to do with these players that have a history of getting in trouble with the law or just getting in trouble period for personal conduct.
Yes, that's a good point.
All right, and and Darren McFadden, what do you think about his ADP? How do you think this affects him as far as the
I
draft?
um I think if you draft Elliott without knowing about the suspension, and you take a later pick in a deep draft, I think you have to go ahead and get Darren McFadden or Alfred Morris. I mean, we do not know who's the backup running back yet until the actual season starts, but one of these guys are going to get majority of the carries, and you and I can run behind this Dallas Cowboys offense.
I know that's right. And and I definitely think it'll be Morris over. I mean McFadden over Morris, right?
And yes, and McFadden was actually a good running back the last time we seen him the year before they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, even though he played with a couple of injuries and he was losing time to Joseph Randall and Lance Dunbar.
Right.
He actually played good. I think he ran for over 1,200 yards, and he was also a big factor receiving out the backfield. So I think McFadden still has a lot left in his tank. I think he fits the Cowboys offense pretty well. Uh, and he actually can put up almost as good of numbers as Ezekiel Elliott if Ezekiel Elliott misses extended time.
Definitely. Um, Absolutely. So yeah, that's something you guys can kind of dissect. Definitely keep an eye on that situation. I'm sure you definitely will hear about it. It'll pop up on your phone if you got the Bleacher Report app as soon as anything is decided on it. So definitely something to keep an eye on before your draft. Hopefully
We
you're not drafting until after the preseason.
we also don't pick McFadden at 3 if Ezekiel Elliott is suspended for
Yeah,
three or more games. He's not worth a
right.
top 3 pick. Go ahead and get one of the big receivers, fall back, and get a LaShawn McCoy, Jordan Howard, Ajayi, or Melvin Gordon. Then maybe if you still want to get McFadden, I would say around that time you can pick him round 8, round 9. Um, but don't overreach for him.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So, question for you: if let's say the top two picks, David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, let's say Zeke is suspended for 3 games, and you have that third pick in the draft, which wide receiver? I'm assuming you're gonna go for. Which wide receiver would you take?
Well, we're going to get more in detail later on in the podcast about this, but the receiver I would go with is Antonio Brown. Um,
That's a good one.
in a redraft league, in a dynasty league, I know a lot of people have been shying away from Antonio Brown because Big Ben might retire next year, and we don't know how Antonio Brown will look without Big Ben.
Mm,
Plus the fact that we have Martavis Bryant coming back, and he might be taking a little bit away from Antonio Brown. But in the redraft leagues, I would go Brown. In dynasty leagues, I would probably have to go Odell Beckham just because I don't see the Giants shying away from using Odell Beckham anytime soon, even with Evan Ingram and old Brandon Marshall.
right, right. And I agree with that. And one thing about Pittsburgh, I'm pretty excited about is the return of Martavius Bryant. I'm pretty high on him right now. I've been watching some footage of him working out. You know, he had a whole year to himself and an injury free off season. So he's saying things like how he never used to lift weights, and this is the first off season where he was kind of lifting weights, and he's put on like 10, 15 pounds of muscle. So definitely, that's a name to keep an eye on.
And Martavis Bryant's ADP has been skyrocketing right now. I mean, I'm on Fantasy Football Calculator. Fantasy Football Calculator is actually a great reference to use to see ADPs and help you start your cheat sheet for the draft. It takes all the ADPs and averages them out for Yahoo, ESPN, and NFL.com, CBS Sports. It averages them out to make their own ADP. So right now, Martavis Bryant is actually going in the late round 4. Um,
Nice.
that's going right around Keenan Allen and Jordan Reed. So he's even going before Jarvis Landry. So right now, Martavis Bryant is kind of high, and I think that one big play he makes in the preseason that he always does.
He'll probably shoot right into that
Shoot,
third round.
right. Yep. And I don't think I'm gonna take him in round 3, but a lot of
Nah.
people will.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, let's go into the next breaking news topic here. We have Kenneth Dixon. We just got news that he's going to miss the entire season. That hurts for the Baltimore Ravens. Um, this kind of hurts the Ravens a little bit, but I don't think it hurts them much. You still have that depth a little bit behind them with Danny Woodhead and Terrence West. So you kind of do have that 1-2 punch. You kind of have the guy to get you the short yardage and then the passing down back. But obviously the Ravens will look to replace him. There's some news they're looking at a few different names such as Rashad Jennings, D'Angelo Williams. So there's a market out there if they want to sign another back. What are your thoughts on this entire situation?
Well, not only that, the Ravens are also known to pick up late cuts. So when the final cuts come out for veterans such as Carlos Hyde, or if Paul Perkins or somebody gets released or becomes available, I think the Ravens will jump all over it. Kenny Dixon was somebody I was high on last year. I drafted him in a lot of leagues because you looked at the Ravens backfield and you didn't see nothing that stood out to you. All you had last year was Javarius Allen, Lorenzo Taliaferro, who's always hurt, and then, like you said, Terrence West. So I drafted Kenny Dixon a lot last year. He was hurt, so we dealt with the injuries. I think it was the first 6 weeks of the season. Then he came in and kept splitting time. Then Terrence West kept holding on to his position. So Kenny Dixon didn't have the open door to take Terrence West's spot right away.
Right.
Then towards the end of the year, you've seen Kenny Dixon shine and flash his skills as a passing, running, a catching, receiving running back.
Right.
And then you heard news of him being suspended the first 4 weeks of this year. Now you're hearing he's hurt. So I think Kenny Dixon's time is going to be over in Baltimore. I think whoever makes a name for themselves this year is going to win the position. I know Danny Woodhead is not known to be starting full-time running back, but he could get the job done. You
Right.
got to remember the Ravens passed the ball, had the most passing attempts out of anybody in the NFL last year, any team in the NFL. So they pass the ball a lot, and they play in a division where some games they're going to have to pass it more than often, especially when they play Cincinnati and Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. A lot of those, and that's the thing with that division also is, outside of the Browns, you never really know how these games are gonna go because sometimes it can be a 3-3 game or it can be a 28 to 31 game. You know what I mean? Sometimes those defenses really buckle down. These teams know each other so well. Uh, but I agree with you. Danny Woodhead isn't known to be that full-time guy. Even though in San Diego, now Los Angeles Chargers, uh, he was kind of in the game quite often before he got injured. I believe it was the first or second week of the season, and that's when, of course, Melvin Gordon became what he is today. But yeah, if Woodhead would have stayed hurt, I mean, would have stayed healthy, I don't think, we would have been as high on Melvin Gordon as we are now. But definitely an unfortunate situation with Kenneth Dixon. Hope he gets back, full recovery. And,
And
I
let's
think, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think the Ravens, it doesn't hurt the Ravens as much as we think it will, because like you mentioned, the most passing attempts in the league last year. They got some new weapons on offense, and Jeremy Maclin. I'm curious to see what Brashard Perryman can do. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. I'm pretty big on him, so we'll see what they can do.
And let's not forget Javarius Allen, running back from USC. In 2015, he started 6 games, 514 rushing yards, 1 TD. But not only that, he caught 45 passes for another 353 yards with two more TDs, and that's only with 6 starts. So I remember that season. I remember him leading a lot of teams in the playoffs, making them deep runs at that running back spot. So if he can get back and look better than Terrence West, I think he can make a little bit of noise.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a battle to watch. Definitely gonna be a battle to watch. All right. And if you want, you want to kind of talk about Carlos Hyde's situation? I know it's not as big of news, but there was a beat writer report come out that they don't expect uh, Carlos Hyde to make the roster, the final 53. What do you think about that? I know
Uh,
49ers are your team, just in case for you listeners that don't know. 49ers is Ty's favorite team, so he knows a lot about them. Dolphins are mine.
well, like the old saying go, I'm sure you heard the cliche before, where there's smoke, there's fire. And if it was one or just two or three people saying it, I wouldn't be concerned. But I'm hearing top insiders say it and repeat it time and time again that Carlos Hyde is just not looking good. The 49ers actually probably don't want him to look that good, knowing that they will have to pay him next year if he has a great season.
Right.
And it's just wasting up the talent for them. It's just wasting up time for them to progress in other talent and put in people that they see that fit the offense.
Right.
They traded for Capri Bibbs. They brought in Tim Hightower. They brought in undrafted rookie running back Matt Breida. They drafted Joe Williams in the 4th round out of Utah, who uh, Kyle Shanahan really liked. So he has his hands full with competition, and he's not known as the shiftiest back, but he does make plays.
Right.
Um,
Now, question for you, really quick, Ty. So, do you think, there's always these stories coming out from different beat writers and everything like that, uh, about some people that are overperforming, some people that are underperforming, and then when the season comes along, there's always that dark horse, like the guy that was not being talked about or was being down talked in training camp. He ends up the second half of the season being like the lead guy. Do you think this is a situation that could play out like this in San Francisco with Carlos Hyde?
Yeah, every year we have that situation, and especially in the running back spot. A couple years ago, it was C.J. Anderson.
Yep.
We've seen Le'Veon Bell come out of, even though he's a first round pick, but he came out of nowhere. Last year was Jordan Howard. It's always going to be those running backs that take teams deep and win teams a lot of games. Um, right now, I think Carlos Hyde is playing for a contract, but do the 49ers coaching staff let him play for that contract? Or do they just wash their hands with him and let him go to another team? If we were drafting today and the season started Sunday, I would still draft Carlos Hyde knowing the ceiling was very high for him the first 2 or 3 weeks that he is going to start. But
Hoping that he could hold on to that job.
if we watch preseason and they're putting in other running backs, and other running backs are clearly out playing Carlos Hyde, I think his ADP will drop,
Hmm.
and there is only time will tell if he gets released. Right now, he's going at the end of round three, Carlos Hyde. That's a little bit high
That's
based on
very high.
based on the talent that's getting drafted after him.
Right.
And some of these running backs that I'm going to name to you getting drafted after him that you know are going to start. You got Ty Montgomery, Spencer Ware is a starter in Kansas City right now, and then you have Christian McCaffrey who might just be the starter in Carolina. So with Carlos Hyde, you have to just cross your fingers and hope. He is the best running back on the roster right now as we speak, but do the 49ers coaching staff let him show his talent? That's the question. Jake. Jake.
All right. Yeah, definitely that. And while we're on that, we'll go ahead and go on to the next set of topic here, which is the first round mock draft. We'll pretty much go back and forth from each position in the first round, whether you have the seventh pick, second pick, ninth pick. We'll go through each one and let you know who we think you should grab in these positions, depending on what we assume people are going to be grabbing in those first couple picks ahead of you. So I'll go ahead and start it off. Since I do have the first pick in our league in that 2017 draft, because I won the championship. Just want to let everybody know that. um, but there's really only three names that really you would want to grab here, right? Um, really only two, to be honest with you. We just spoke about one and why you should kind of shy away from that. But you have the two biggest names in fantasy right now, which is Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson. And it's a really tough one to call here. I mean, if I had to choose, depending on, there's a few factors that make me want to choose go either way. If I'm just looking for both of them, obviously great receivers, um, pretty much touch the ball almost every play on their respected offenses. But based on just the hype alone of what I've been hearing from about David Johnson out of camp, Bruce Arians and even David Johnson saying how they want to get him to touch the ball 30 times a game. I mean, it's hard to ignore, right? But then you have Le'Veon Bell on that side where, you know he's going to be the guy. There's not going to be many backups coming to spell him in the game. Like he's literally playing almost close to 100% of snaps every single game. Ah, it's a tough one for me here, Ty. Right now, I'll go with David Johnson just because he's got that 1 year age difference. He's a little bit younger, a little bit healthier than Bell. I know Bell has struggled with some injuries throughout his career. Even though the one he had in 2015 wasn't really his fault, that was kind of just a nasty tackle that took him out. But I think I'll go ahead and go with David Johnson. I like the way he runs, and I think he'll be a really good force for him for the Cardinals this year.
David Johnson is a very good choice. A lot of people are choosing David Johnson. He's actually number one in everybody's ADP right now. He's a very talented back. The only question I have about David Johnson is, do they abuse him again? Uh, Especially when this Le'Veon Bell news is coming out. Does David Johnson see this and say, "Hey, I want to be paid like Le'Veon Bell is"?
Right.
And do the Cardinals want to run him and use him like Le'Veon Bell? Because if you keep continuing to give David Johnson these receptions and all these carries, guess what? If Le'Veon Bell gets his money, you're gonna have to pay David Johnson. And right now, the highest paid running back in the league, I think, is LaShawn McCoy at 8 million, and I think Le'Veon Bell wants almost double that, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, I heard he wants like that. He wants pretty much starting running back money on top of like a second option wideout money. So both of those together at once. He's pretty much trying to get paid. I don't blame him. Did you recently hear about that news about the CTE scans that they've done on brains?
90% of football players.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I don't you can't blame these guys for trying to get paid. I mean, it's a dirty game, and if you can have that leverage to get what you can out of these organizations and these owners, go for it, right?
Yeah, we hear stories all the time of teams sitting players out week 16, week 17, so they won't meet bonuses and
Right.
incentives in their contracts. And I think this is going to be a trend as well. Le'Veon Bell would be the pick at number one, but if you pick him at number two, like I'm going to do, uh, be very careful because I don't think the Steelers feel the need to use him as that number two slash number three slot receiver this year, knowing that if they keep feeding him the ball, guess what? He's going to want to get paid. Not only will he want to get paid next year and the year after, but if you keep using him at that slot receiver and abusing him with receptions, he's going to want contract extensions and he's going to want to keep getting paid. I don't blame him, but do the Steelers see this and say, "Hey, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's use Juju Smith-Schuster from USC, who they drafted. Let's maybe throw it to the tight end. Martavius Bryant is back. We got him. We pay Antonio Brown a lot of money. Let's use him, and let's save Le'Veon Bell for those actual running yards we need from him."
Right, right. Definitely. And on top of that, Martavius Bryant, like we mentioned earlier, like there's no need for you to be splitting Le'Veon out wide when you got a full complement of receivers with Eli Rogers, Antonio Brown, and Martavius Bryant. So not really a need for him to be out wide anymore. and obviously to save some money, they'll probably cut back on splitting them out.
He's has Le'Veon Bell has the highest ceiling right now, just like David Johnson. Their ceilings are very high, so they can win you any week they play. I mean, just the averages alone probably average for 2 fantasy spots if they're on their game. But we also have to think about we play fantasy, but we don't control the team. So when you draft these people, realize that these teams are thinking for their financial situations as well as the players' financial situations and injuries. And one more point I would like to make: Le'Veon Bell has not finished a complete football season in the last 3 years,
Good
so
point.
injuries are a concern. And also John Connor, the rookie out of Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
they spent I think a third round pick on him, and I think he's gonna see a lot of playing time. Not saying he's better than Bell, not saying he's cutting into Bell's time, not saying he's eventually gonna take Bell's spot, but I think he's gonna get more carries than D'Angelo Williams did.
Right, and just to cut back on some of that tread on Le'Veon Bell, right? Every like I mentioned earlier, everyone's trying to implement that 1-2 punch where you got the defense on their heels. You get a guy that's fresh in to kind of wear them out, and then you come back with your main guy to finish it off. But yeah, definitely agree with you on that, D. And I'll go ahead and go with the number 3 pick here. So assuming that Ezekiel gets suspended 1 or 2 games, um, we're talking about fantasy and production here, and you definitely want somebody that's going to be in there all 16 games. So I'm going to go ahead and have to go with Odell Beckham at number 3. I mean, obviously the guy's just a superstar, one of the biggest names we have in the game today. Um, you know, just the whole route running, the catching, the 50-50 balls. I just gotta. I think him between him, Antonio Brown, and Julio, I would have to say he probably does it better than all three. In the complete wide receiver aspect, and obviously he's in that NFC East division where you got the Cowboys, Eagles, and the
Redskins.
Redskins, which is a high scoring division, right? Like every time these teams meet up, there's always points being put up. So you definitely are gonna get your money's worth with that 6 times a year. Um, but yeah, that's who I will go with at 3. What do you think about that, Ty?
At three, if you don't go Elliott, Odell Beckham is the a good choice, but I might have to go Antonio Brown. Like I said earlier in the podcast,
Right.
redraft leagues, it's Antonio. Dynasty leagues, it's Odell. Antonio Brown, I think, is Ben's most reliable receiver, and I think he's gonna feed him. I think they need him to earn his money, even though he's earned it already. I think they need him to earn it to get Big Ben at least deeper in the playoffs and
Right.
win that division.
Right. Yeah, they definitely need that guy to step up in the playoffs. It always seems like the three Bs. Um, there's always somebody coming up short in the playoffs. So once they get all those guys in sync, New England may have some competition. I know it's still, you know, early, but assuming that Martavius Bryant steps up to the plate, they can really spread the field and do some pretty nice things on
Uh,
offense.
Another point I would like to make about the Odell Beckham, I think he's the best young receiver in the league. Don't get me wrong, and I think Eli Manning's going to feed him. I think the Giants' defense showed last year that they're improved, and
Right.
they might not need to play pitch and catch and come from behind like we've seen Odell's first 2 years before last year. So they might play more conservative. They might run the ball a little bit more. They might be happy with the 17-10 games and those 60-yard bombs in the fourth quarter
Right.
that you see Odell make all the time might not be there or might not need to be there. So let's just see. They improved the offense. They gave Eli a lot of weapons. They gave Odell a lot of help. But we have to see if they play the same way.
Right. Now do you consider? AJ Green to be in that same class with Odell, Antonio Brown, and Julio?
Well, AJ Green played, I think, 12 games last year,
Right. He did have the
and
hamstring.
uh, and I think when he came back with the hamstring, he hurt his knee. But he was before those injuries, he was on pace to be the fantasy league #1 receiver. So he's up there. I
Yeah.
mean, he's not the flashy, he's not the talkative person, he's not the dancing after each touchdown. But
He gets the job done.
I've been doing a lot of drafts. I've been doing a lot of mock drafts, and I've been drafting AJ Green before Mike Evans.
Nice, nice. Yeah, Mike Evans is I mean he's definitely one of those guys, Jameis Winston's favorite target. Um, but you know, he's you might that's one of those guys. I think he's a second round guy just because of uh the volatility of Jameis Winston. You never know which Jameis you're gonna get in any game. You could get the Jameis that throws for 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, or you can get the Jameis that throws for less than 200 and a couple picks and no touchdowns. So it really comes down to the quarterback. But I think Jameis is ready to take that leap this year. And for I'm guessing for your number 4 pick, if I go Odell, you're going Antonio Brown.
No, sir. Based on Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, and I know a lot of people might not want to hear this. The NFL loves the Cowboys on TV. Cowboys bringing tons and tons of money. They loved last year that the Cowboys were winning because Cowboys bring in more money. Jerry has to pay for that beautiful stadium they have. I'm
Hmm.
going with Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think the league is going to
Nice.
come down on him too hard. I don't think I don't think Jerry's gonna allow. I don't think the league can afford it. The league likes when the Cowboys win. The league actually loves it. They love when the Cowboys make the playoffs. The ratings go up. They can sell more commercial time, and they need Ezekiel's help to do this. They cannot sell the world on Dak Prescott and Darren McFadden because they've seen Darren McFadden before. People want to see Elliott. With no Tony Romo there, they have to fall in love with Prescott, and Prescott is not some guy or a quarterback that the fans want to see throw 40 times and win a game on his arm like Aaron Rodgers. He needs his running mate, which is Ezekiel Elliott, to do this.
Right.
Uh, so at number 4, I would have to go Ezekiel Elliott. Like I said earlier in the podcast show, that I plan on maybe it being next year or later in the season. But if he can win me those first 4, 5, 6, 7 games, I'm taking Ezekiel Elliott and maybe handcuffing him with Alfred Morris or Darren McFadden late in the draft. But I'm going with Ezekiel Elliott.
Okay, that's a good pick. Can't argue with that. You definitely know what you're getting with Zeke. There's a lot of people that are thinking because the Cowboys lost 2 offensive linemen from last year that they might actually be passing more this year. So Dez might be somebody on your radar. He's got a full healthy, knock on wood. He's got a healthy training camp so far. Which is like one of his first of his career, where he can go a full training camp and being able to get that practice time in. So that's definitely a combination you want to watch out for. Dak to Dez. That might be the highlight
Don't
of the
forget,
fantasy news.
don't forget Cole Beasley, their leading receiver last year.
Right, right, absolutely. And hopefully, and also they got the draft pick, um, the wide receiver that they added. I know they just cut Whitehead from FAU. So
Oh, their receiver from North Carolina, Switzer.
right, yeah, Ryan Switzer. He's yeah, so he'll be. I'm hearing he'll be a factor in that passing offense. Um, but when you need a first down, you know who to go to, right?
Oh yeah, yes. You have to go to Dez or the old reliable Tony Romo.
All right, and
One more note on Switzer from North Carolina.
mhm.
They s- they spent a good draft pick on him, and people didn't expect it. He was the 27th pick in the 4th round. He runs a 4.5. He's very agile, and a lot of people compare him to Cole Beasley. Uh, a lot of people look at Cole Beasley and be like, he's not athletic. But if you watch YouTube highlights of Cole Beasley, you see him playing on the basketball court, dunking between his legs. We're
Oh
doing reverse
man.
360 dunks. Yeah, he's very athletic. So don't sleep on Cole Beasley. And Ryan Switzer from North Carolina is almost the same.
Right, and also another note with Switzer to piggyback off that, he's actually going to be looks like he's going to be handling the primary punt return duty. So you get additional points with that if your league has gives points for punt return yards and also touchdowns.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, so with pick number 5 in the draft, you went ahead. So far, if in case you missed it, we got David Johnson at 1, Le'Veon Bell at 2, Odell at 3, and Ezekiel Elliott at 4. At number 5, I gotta go with Julio Jones. Um, listen, they got a obviously Kyle Shanahan is no longer in town. Went to San Francisco, but we do have a new offensive coordinator in Steve Sarkisian, and he let it know right off the bat that he wants to get Julio more involved in the red zone. I mean, obviously, offensive coordinators say things like this, but when they're actually in there, nobody's really throwing the ball inside of the 10-yard line anymore. Especially if you have the two dominant running backs and the 1-2 punch in Atlanta with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Um, but Julio, I think they'll probably be passing more because even though that running attack is pretty lethal in Atlanta, um, I think Matt Ryan more comfortable coming off this MVP season. They'll implement some things that he's really good at, and that works well with the offense. So I feel like they'll probably hand the keys over to Matt Ryan this year, where he can kind of make changes and calls at the line, and that's a big thumbs up for Julio when you got a new offensive coordinator. You kind of want to piggyback off of what worked the year before, right? So you probably won't change too many things. You'll probably implement a couple new things, but that yeah, I'm going Julio Jones at number 6. What do you think?
Smart choice. You look at their division, who they play these teams twice: Tampa, New Orleans, and Carolina. I'm sure all these defenses have did things to improve, but until we see it, we have to speculate that they're still easy defenses to pass on. And not only that, you cannot line up nobody versus Julio Jones and expect to stop him.
Hmm.
As far as Steve Sarkisian's play calling, I never seen it at an NFL level. His college level offense was okay, but a lot of Lane Kiffin implementing, quarterback options and run past options into the offense, and the offense was very well, the word to describe it, they weren't as well as they should have been
A little
under him. And
stagnant.
yes, in the national championship game, I think they could have played better, and I think they would have played it better under Lane Kiffin. But when you give anybody these offensive weapons, as the Falcons have, it's going to be kind of hard to mess it up, knowing that you have Tevin Coleman, Freeman, Julio Jones, Taylor Gabriel, Austin Hooper, the tight end, and then you have the Matt Ryan coming off his MVP season. Uh, do I expect Julio to have a 300-yard receiving game? No, but I do expect him to be top 2, top 3 fantasy wide receiver.
Now those games against New Orleans, those are always set for some fireworks. So you never know. You play those guys 2 times a year. There's definitely going to be some points put up on the board.
Yeah, uh, when I look at schedules and plan who I want to draft, I try to get players on the Saints and players that play a lot against the Saints, because every year, the Saints have one of the worst defenses in the league,
Hmm.
and the Saints play in that dome. So if you can get them in a shootout in that dome, you have the potential to put up points, and points equal uh, fantasy points for us, and fantasy points equal wins.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Who you taking at number 6?
Number six. If we were doing a draft, a real draft, and you passed on Antonio Brown, I would be very happy to get him at six.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting that.
I, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You get Antonio Brown, who has the potential to score 20 touchdowns in a season because Big Ben just loves throwing him the ball. Without Le'Veon Bell there, uh, Antonio Brown was getting 2 and 3 touchdowns to look like the game. So when you have the ability to go 60 yards on any given play, which Antonio Brown has the ability to do, I would take him at six all day, every day. What do you?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And then I knew Brown wasn't gonna stay off that board too much longer. So pretty much, it looks like consensus is saying that the top 6 picks in the draft are pretty much gonna look the same, right? You got the top 3 running backs and then the potential top 3 wide receivers in Julio Jones, Odell, and Antonio Brown. You agree with that?
Yeah, right now, average ADPs for the players is Johnson one, David Johnson one, Le'Veon Bell two, Ezekiel Elliott is still going number three, and this is updated as of July 25th today. Antonio Brown is actually number four, so we both passed on him. I
Yeah.
passed on him at four, and then Julio is going before Odell Beckham Jr., which the top. The top three receivers, which are Antonio Brown, Jones, and Beckham, will get drafted based on which team owner likes each receiver.
Right. Okay. All right. And so with this number 7 pick, this is kind of when the draft really starts off, right? You got pretty much your top guys out of the way, and number 7 is pretty much like a dart throw. You got on the board right now Aaron Rodgers, LaShawn McCoy, Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Melvin Gordon, AJ Green, just to name a few of the top guys that are going around that spot. So it's a pretty tough one. So it's based on your needs, right? If you're like the guy that wants a quarterback that you can just plug in, you don't have to worry about on a week to week basis, except for your bye weeks. Um, definitely, I would say definitely go with Aaron Rodgers. But with this 7th pick, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to go with Rodgers on this one. Rodgers, obviously one of the most consistent quarterbacks we have in the game. Um, if people weren't so, I'm one of those guys that think if people weren't so blinded by Brady's Super Bowls, they would realize how great Rodgers is. The guy just literally buys time, rolls out of the pocket, gets his receivers open. Him and his receivers are on such a good page together. Like they know what to do in certain situations. It's insane. Like that play in the semis, NFC semis against the Cowboys, where second time's running off the clock. Aaron rolls out to his left, and at the last possible second, he finds Jared Cook on the sideline with a nice toe tap catch.
Not only that play, Jay, but just think of over the last 3 years how many different Hail Marys we've seen him.
Oh
I
my
mean, I can
gosh.
remember the Jared Cook. I can remember the Jared Arbidaris against the Cardinals Hail
Yeah.
Mary. Uh, so he's been involved in a lot of Hail Marys that get you those points.
Yeah, and if your league awards log big plays, like in our league, we have 40-yard bonuses for quarterbacks, running backs, and receivers. If you have a play for over 40 yards, you get bonus points on top of that, on top of the regular points that you would get for the yards and touchdown. And then you get an additional bonus for a 40-yard touchdown and 40-yard play. So if your league rewards that, Aaron Rodgers is definitely the way to go here. On top of guys like LaShawn McCoy, LaShawn will break some tackles and he can get some big runs. But with that offense, it's not really surefire thing. Tom Brady, he's more of a dump off guy. That offense is more tailored to getting first downs than really big plays. So um, Aaron Rodgers is my pick on that one.
I have to disagree with you based on your league settings. This is real important to draft the quarterback first round. Uh, in a lot of leagues, quarterbacks touchdowns are 4 points. In a lot of standard leagues, especially, they're only 4 points. So everybody else's touchdowns are 6 points. So at the end of the season, quarterbacks do not score as much as normal players,
Right.
and then that can go as far as up to players that are drafted in the third and fourth round sometimes. Um, so when you're listening to this podcast, just keep in mind he picked it based on a 6 point per passing touchdown for Aaron Rodgers, which would make a big difference. You figure if Aaron Rodgers throws 40 touchdowns, that's 80 extra points a year, and he doesn't throw much interceptions, so you're gonna keep your points on interceptions. So Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback, the ADP #1 quarterback. Uh, but I thought Jay was gonna go the AJ Green route, which I'm gonna go here at pick
Okay.
8. Uh,
Good choice.
AJ Green is actually the #1 receiver if he stays healthy. A lot of people talk about Brown and Beckham and Julio. Well, Julio also doesn't ever stay healthy. He'd probably be #1 too. But AJ Green is Mr. Reliable. AJ Green has Andy Dalton looking his way, just like Big Ben looks Antonio Brown way. And if you put the numbers side by side, AJ Green maybe does not have the breakaway ability and quickness as Antonio Brown, but he does get the big plays. He does have the big games, the 10 catches for 181 yards. He's very reliable. He can get the big play that can make his day for his fantasy day because it can be that one catch for the touchdown for 50 yards, and that can be his day. And like I said, I like him over the other receivers that are on the board, which are Mike Evans and Jordy Nelson. The only player I can see taking over him maybe is LaShawn McCoy, but I think it's a couple of spots early for LaShawn McCoy.
Right, and AJ Green definitely a solid pick at number 8. Um, like I said, McCoy, you definitely get know what you're getting with him. You get that quick, shifty running back, but you do have the health concerns. Along with AJ Green, you do have some health concerns, but with the moves that Cincinnati made this offseason with John Brown and um, getting kind of a diverse running game going, because it wasn't really that diverse with Gio Bernard and what's the starter's name?
Oh, Jeremy Hill.
Jeremy Hill. Thank you. So yeah, it wasn't really that diverse with Jeremy Hill. You kind of knew who was getting the ball based on who was in the game. If Bernard was in there, it was more than likely a passing play. If Jeremy Hill was in there, it's pretty much running in between the tackles. But yeah, that's definitely a solid pick at 8. I definitely agree. AJ Green should have a pretty big year. Um, and I think that that's something that he can definitely piggyback off for the next couple of years. So Cincinnati might be a good place for some offense for the next couple of years. Only thing that scares me once again is the same thing I talked about a little bit earlier with the Ravens. It's just that division. Sometimes those games can get really slow and really ugly with a bunch of punts and playing for field position and field goals. So that's
I,
something to keep in mind.
I agree. I agree with you on that. But you also, with a receiver like AJ Green, you've seen him beat Reeves. You've seen him beat Josh Norman. So the average receiver can't beat those corners in man-to-man coverage, but he can. So that's just like him losing a game or two versus Pittsburgh and Baltimore, because those average receivers also lose a game versus those great corners.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, and at number 9, I guess I got. I guess I kind of got to do this, right? You got. If I went with Aaron Rodgers at 7, and you still got a chance to get Brady at the end of the first round. I mean, you got to take him, right? You can't. No suspension this year. He's playing from out the gate. He's a smart quarterback. Doesn't take hits. Reads defenses very well, and second best quarterback next to Aaron Rodgers skill wise, in my opinion. So I'm definitely gonna have to go with Brady here. You definitely know that offense is diverse, a bunch of different people. The thing with me, I'll throw this out here now. Like I'm not a big fan of New England Patriots players, especially for fantasy purposes, just because there's so many different guys. They game plan really well, right? Like one week they're game planning to, take advantage of a weakness of a corner that they think is not as good. So it might be a wide receiver that goes off this week, or
They game plan very well.
yeah, and that's where most of their success comes from. So that's why I'm not too high on New England players, just because you never know. I'm really big on consistency. You never know who's really going to take off on any given week. But yeah, well with Brady, the center of that offense, he's going to be the orchestrator. He's telling people where to go. He's dumping the ball off, and he's getting people put in the right position. So Brady is definitely going to have to go at number 9. And I definitely think that you're gonna see those two, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, go both in the first round. That's almost a given. Um, but yeah, with the addition of Brandon Cooks, look for a lot of big plays, spreading that field, get Gronk, take some of that pressure off Gronk a little bit, get that safety out the way. So that's that's who I'm going with. What do you think?
I think you're right. Also, want the listeners to keep in mind that New England's defense improved. They added the corner from Buffalo, and they also bringing back Malcolm Butler, and they added a couple of pass rushers. So those games where they're up 21 zip in the second half, you probably won't see a lot of passing from Brady. That's when you see your Mike Gillislees. That's when you see your Rex Burkheads and your Deion Lewis, your James White running or getting dumps out of the backfield, and you might even see
Garoppolo.
Garoppolo.
Yeah.
So if if the Patriots have a 21 zip lead and he only has one touchdown and one came from special teams and the other one came from the running back, that can hurt your fantasy week. But you also have to keep in mind those games where they're in the 28-28 in the second half, and Brady has 400 yards passing. So, but if that was me, I don't see how you passed up on a lot of these players like Mike Evans, LaShawn McCoy, Melvin Gordon, and your boy Jay Ajayi.
My boy. Yeah, Jay Ajayi. I mean, that's I guess our next episode we'll kind of talk about maybe second round. You think? So
Yeah.
I'll get into Jay Ajayi a little bit. I'm not as high on him as most people are because I really know what the Dolphins are trying to do with him this year. Most people are kind of blind to it. But we'll talk about that. You got to tune into the next one to find out my thoughts on him. So the last pick of the first round, who do we have, Ty?
Like I said, we have a lot of options here. We have McCoy, Melvin Gordon, Mike Evans. I'm thinking about I see Jordy. He's lurking around back there, and then Devontae Freeman at number pick 10. And if you're in a 10 team league, you most likely have the turnaround, which is the back-to-back picks.
Yeah, that's what I
Which
live
are
for there.
valuable. But if you're in a 12-team league, you don't. So you don't have that. So I'm gonna draft like we're in a 12-team league, even though we're only gonna do 10 teams. But I would have to go with running backs, and it's a tough choice between Gordon and McCoy. But I would have to go with McCoy. Uh,
Right.
the consistency, the new offensive coordinator and head coach they have there, they didn't bring in much to take playing time from McCoy, and he's been very consistent as long as he stays healthy. Um, Also, I think Buffalo new head coach Sean McDermott uh, wants to win games. I mean, we've been in a league now where we've seen head coaches get fired after 2 years or even 1 year because they didn't make a quick turnaround.
Right.
So I think he wants to prove to the owners and to the management that he's the coach to win games, and the way to do that in Buffalo is feed LaShawn McCoy. We don't have the quarterback in Tyrod Taylor that can win it on his arm. I think the defense is going to be improved with Sean McDermott's defensive background, but uh, for them to do a lot of winning, especially in that division, they're going to have to run the ball with McCoy, hope he gets a couple of breaks, and I think they're going to feed him. One more thing I like to put in there is they don't have a lot invested. This coaching staff does not have a lot invested like Rex Ryan did into LaShawn McCoy. They can run the ball every play if they wanted to, and don't care if he is healthy for the next 3 or 4 years because they know that if they're going to be coaching there for a while, he's not going to retire or a Buffalo Bill, and he's going to move on to his new team, and they can use and abuse him and don't have to worry about paying him.
Right. Right. And my thing I just want to add on to that is the offense coordinator, um, who is Rick Dennison. Um, a pretty interesting candidate. He's worked with a few different quarterbacks. He's developed a proven and efficient running game throughout his career. And so if you look up his history, his run games were high in yardage and low in attempts during his career. So he knows how to pretty much get get some big plays out of the running game. Not really that much attempts, so that could pretty much help McCoy. And at that 10th pick, I think you're pretty much getting a steal. And also Dennison, he has both offensive line and special team experience, so that'll pretty much help you out. You pretty much got a offense coordinator that understands the line, understands running the ball, and how to maximize each attempt, which is exactly what McCoy is all about, right? So that is that's my take on it. I think McCoy will definitely have a good year, pending he stays healthy. Um, but once again, it all depends how there's always going to be those games against the division. Obviously, you have the Jets. They'll probably not be a factor this year, so we'll probably get some good games out of McCoy. The Patriots, that's going to be tough because once they go down 21 or 14, Tyrod is going to be launching that pigskin. So
But he's also a good receiving running back too. So
that's true.
a lot of screens, a lot of dump offs. Tyrod is not particularly well in the dump offs, but I
Right.
think Sammy Watkins being there, and I expect Charles Clay to have a better year than he did last year. So at number 10, only other person I would choose over him is Melvin Gordon, but the reason I chose McCoy over Melvin Gordon is because we see McCoy do it year in and year out.
As long as
Melvin,
he's healthy.
yeah, Melvin Gordon, he had a great year last year because he scored a lot of touchdowns, but his games were like 21 rushes for 60, 70 yards and two touchdowns, which were good for fantasy. But
Right.
how can San Diego live with that if they want to win games?
Absolutely. Yeah, and one more thing, McCoy, I mentioned the Jets and Patriots. I don't think when they play the Dolphins, I don't think they're scoring a point at all. So that's just what I think. That's something else to keep an eye on. But no, the Dolphins. I mean, he should. Those games are always back and forth. Dolphins ran on them. Ajayi ran on them twice for 200 yards.
Hey,
The both times they met last year.
I read an interesting stat today. They said that Ajayi had a 60-yard run against Buffalo last year,
Hmm.
and that's because 10 men were on the field. If you
Oh man.
if you take that run away from him and he don't get the 200-yard game, they said it drops him down like 5 or 6 spots in his running back position. So that's something not major, but something you might want to keep in mind when you look at Ajayi's stats from last year. That one of the runs he had against Buffalo, only 10 men were on the field, and if you just take that one run away, that's almost like 12, 15 points in fantasy leagues. He had
Right.
dropped some behind a couple of running backs.
Absolutely. That's big. I didn't even I think I read about that somewhere a while ago. I completely forgot about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, more information on Jay Ajayi coming up next show. So definitely tune in for that. But yeah, definitely thank you guys for sticking in with us. This has been episode 2. I know we've been rambling a little bit. We'll try to we'll get some feedback from you guys. See if you guys want this show a little shorter, a little longer. We're pretty flexible. So definitely give us your feedback on that. Um, anything you want to leave them with to close, Ty?
No, just like I said, first episode, this is our opinions. We are not sharks, but we do try our hardest to do our research and provide you with facts and opinions because we play this for fun and we play this for money, and this is our favorite thing to do in life is fantasy. So
Well,
just
I can think of a couple of things I like to do more than fantasy.
well,
We'll say
favorite
top three. We'll say top three. Top three.
favorite thing to do that we can talk about on here right now.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There you go. All right. Well. Thank you guys once again. Thank you, Ty, for joining us today. Look out for some special guests that we will have in the upcoming weeks. Obviously, we got training camp just kicked off for the Cowboys and Cardinals. So we're pretty much in it right now. Fantasy season is in full effect. Make sure you guys are aware. Do your research before your drafts. We'll always be here to provide you any insight. So if you have any questions, definitely let us know. We'll give you the best answers that we can. Um, and we'll catch up with you guys next week. Once again, this is Jay and Ty, your gurus. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week. Take it easy, guys.